Hey, welcome to Android Dialogues, where we have bite-sized conversations with people in the Android community. I'm Huyen and I'm speaking with
Danny Preussler.
And we're currently in Berlin for Droidcon Berlin. Danny, where are you based and how'd you get started in Android?
So I'm here from Berlin. I'm working here for Groupon. And I started on the Java ME side so a long time ago on like what we later called feature phones. At some point, Android came up and the tools were so much better, the API was so much better, so I had to switch.
Awesome. And so Danny is a speaker at Droidcon Berlin, and you're speaking on unit testing, right?
Yes.
And unit testing is really important and kind of has been actually a pretty big conversation in the community lately. What was your talk on unit testing?
So I gave two talks. One was giving you like 15 ways to improve your unit test if you already have them. And the other one was about how can you unit test without the need for Roboelectric.
Oh, interesting. So, okay, how about your first talk? 15 ways to improve your unit testing. Can you give us maybe 3 or 4 of them?
Okay. So most of them were focused on readability. So because unit tests are documentation for your code. So try to reduce the noise. So for example, you don't need stuff like private and final in your unit tests because a unit test always stands alone. There's no one seeing it at the same time.
Right.
So you don't need private final. And there's less code that you see and you get to the important part. Also try to move everything out of your actual test method into a setup, for example, so that you really can just read the test in like 2 lines, maybe 3 lines, not more, one assert, and suddenly everything is really readable. And then have like a good naming. Don't name it test method name or something. Say, this should return an error, something like this.
Okay, cool. No, that's really interesting. I never thought about it like that, but it's documentation for your code. That's really smart because it provides both the notion of function and what you should see out of the test. That's really cool. Okay, how about another tip?
So for example, sometimes you need reflection.
Yeah.
So in unit testing, we need reflection, and it's not as bad as in Android. There are a couple of frameworks who make the reflection code look much nicer. Have like a fluent interface, for example. Reflect on that this class set this value to. So this reads much better than having like 10 lines of code with like 3 different exceptions.
Right.
So try to find something like this because again, it's all about readability.
Definitely. So, okay, so your other talk was about how to do testing without Roboelectric.
Exactly.
So for folks that don't know what Roboelectric is, can you tell them what it is and then tell us why we don't need it?
So Robolectric is a library that came out a couple of years ago when there was no basically unit testing in Android. So we really needed it back then. And actually 3 years ago, I gave a talk unit testing with Robolectric. But nowadays we have Google supports unit testing directly in Android Studio, directly with Gradle. We didn't have this before. That's why we needed Robolectric. Because you couldn't just run a unit test. You needed the emulator for this.
Right.
But Robolectric came with a lot of features that somehow emulates Android a bit, so you can do stuff on views.
Right.
And it made it kind of dangerous, and also it became kind of flaky. A lot of tests became flaky, and you spend a lot of time fixing your test environment instead of focusing on your code. So this is why I said, okay, it's like 3 years later, we have awesome tools nowadays. We have Android Studio, we have Gradle, we have unit testing support. How can you move away from Robolectric? Because it's also slow. So a normal test run in like a few milliseconds, while Robolectric needs at least 4 or 5 seconds for a single test. So you can really gain something when you try to get rid of Robolectric.
So if you're currently on a Roboelectric, if you're using Roboelectric now for your testing, is it hard to transition away from it?
There are definitely challenges. It's not an easy path, but it really depends on how you vote your tests. So if you kept like to the idea of a unit test something small and verify that this is done, then it's pretty easy. Most of the tests will work when you just remove the run with Roboelectric. But if you use a lot of those, I call this magic. So a lot of those, I do something with a view and then I do a fragment transaction, like stuff that don't belong in a unit test. Then it will be kind of a hard path. And I gave some tips in the presentation how you can move out of this and what you have to do. A parcel, for example. A lot of people vote parcel tests with Roboelectric. It's easy. You write something into a parcel and you get it out and it's working.
Right.
With a pure Android unit test, there is no implementation. Everything is empty. So whatever you write into a parcel will be gone. So you have to adapt like to the original idea of unit testing and think about a little step back.
Right. So kind of going back to, as you said, kind of going back to basics and doing less of the, magic that
Less magic and more mocking, for example.
So it sounds actually like it's a good way to kind of get back to maybe like more standard, I guess it'd be fair to say.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Danny. So do you have your slides online or
the slides on Slideshare. So.
Oh, excellent. So we should definitely check it out if you're doing unit testing. Sounds like Danny's got tons of great tips for you to improve your unit testing. If people wanted to find find you on the internet, how can they do that?
They can search on Twitter, they can search GitHub, Slideshare, so it's easy to find me.
All right, sounds good. So thank you so much, Danny.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it was awesome, and thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.